around the world on the importance of how we can save as many babies' lives, how we can support moms through the process. And so that's what I've always done. I think when you talk about the federal ban, what I've tried to do is be realistic and say that, in order for us to pass a federal ban, you have to have 60 Senate votes. You have to have the majority of the House. You have to have a signature of a president. And we need to be honest with the American people that we haven't had 60 Republicans in over 100 years. We may have 45 pro-life senators. So no Republican president can ban abortion any more than a Democrat president can ban these state laws. So I think it was good that unelected justices have now put it back into the hands of the states. The people is where this should be decided. And we are seeing states like Iowa and South Carolina which have signed, pro-life bills, and I welcome that. And then we've seen some states that have gone more of the pro-choice side. I wish that wasn't the case, but the people have decided. But I think we have to focus on the fact that what can be done at the federal level. I do think that there is a place for a federal bill, but I think the only way we're going to get 60 Senate votes is we're going to have consensus. And I think there's a way to make sure that we can all agree on banning late-term abortion. We should all agree to be able to encourage adoptions and good quality adoptions. We should all agree that doctors and nurses who don't believe in abortion shouldn't have to perform them. And I think we can all agree that no state law should say if a woman got an abortion, she goes to jail or she gets the death penalty. Let's start there. And with the premise of not demonizing the issue anymore, let's humanize it. And humanize it in a way that we respect everyone's views, but we go back to the mission focus of how do we save as many babies as possible and support as many moms as possible. Thank you for that question.
And Nikki, I just wanted to chime in on how important I believe your view on this issue is. As a person who's been president of my Oral Right to Life twice, there is no issue more important to me than the unborn. I believe every single unborn child deserves the right to life. But there are a lot of people who are pro-choice, and I love them. Because if I don't love them, I will never be able to convince them that caring for unborn children is right. And I think what's happened in the movement is so often we have become so angry that we're losing our children, that we're losing people who might come to our side. And so I think this softer image on how we talk about abortion, how we approach people on abortion. I made a decision long ago, and excuse me for getting spiritual here, but I made a decision many, many years ago that if my attitude to abortion ever negatively influenced, which my abortion was a calling for me, the life issue was a calling. If my attitude toward my calling on being pro-life ever negatively influenced the Great Commission on bringing people to Christ, I was doing it wrong. And so we have to have this softer image, and we have to have people who are willing to talk with people instead of scream at people, because that is where our country is now. Everything is angry and hostile, and that's one of the reasons I decided to support Nikki Haley, because she wants to get us away from all of that hostility, anger, to the place where we're actually speaking again.
Well, and I think to go on to that, Marlis, what and I've done this throughout my life, I think that what we've seen from the Democrat side, they've put fear into everybody's hearts on this issue. But we've seen from the Republican side, it's come across harsh, like it's judgment. And we don't need fear or judgment. We need respect. And I think that when we start to talk with love and respect on this issue, that's when you get people to come together. But if they feel judged, or if they feel fearful, they immediately run. And so that's what we don't want to do. We want to bring them in and then, be able to talk to them in a way that's very respectful of whatever their story might be or whatever their situation might be. But I think at the end of the day, we can all agree that it's a good thing to save as many babies as possible and support as many moms as possible.
Well, thank you for that question. Thank you, Nikki, and thank you, Marlis. And again, if you're joining late, you're on a live telephone town hall with Nikki Haley and Marlis Pakma, the two-time past president of Iowa Right to Life, who is supporting Nikki for president. For those that have been on the line, just very quickly, let us know where you stand on the upcoming Iowa caucuses on January 15th. If you're planning to support Nikki, press 1. If you're still undecided, press 2. And if you're ready to help out the campaign, speak at a caucus site, help us gather more support, please press 9. But with that, next question. Let's go ahead live to Michelle from Clear Lake. Michelle, you're live.
Oh, hello? Oh,
Hi, Michelle.
am I on?
You're on.
Madam President, hello.
How are you?
Thank you. Sorry, I don't know how this works. Well, we have a lot going on overseas right now. And here in the U.S. with the Palestinian, or I should say Hamas, and Israel conflict. A lot of anti-Semitism that's happening on college campuses and around the U.S. If something like this was happening on your watch, how would you treat this, and what would you do different from Biden?
Well, that's a great question, and thank you for that. And it's disturbing to turn on the TV. It's disturbing to see what so many kids are going through on college campuses. But what we all as Americans need to remember is there are things that can be done to fix this. And it's not just telling everybody, oh, let's go be nice. We can actually do real things. And so let's start first at our college campuses and what's happening there. We have got to get the foreign money out of our college campuses. You know, you always hear about Chinese money going in there, where they steal research and spread Chinese propaganda. There is Arab money that goes to our college campuses as well. So when you see these pro-Hamas protests, this has been growing for quite a while. This anti-Semitism didn't just show up. It has been bubbling up for a long time. And that's why the first thing we need to do is go to our universities and say, you either take foreign money or you take American money, but the days of taking both are over. The second thing we need to do is understand what has happened through social media that has really caused this to be even further exaggerated and further kind of divisive in the way that we look at that. We must ban TikTok, period. We have to ban TikTok. If you go and look at what happened after October 7th, all these pro-Hamas videos started happening on TikTok. Last week, there was a pro-Bin Laden post that showed Bin Laden's letter of why he was justified in the attacks on 9/11. Those aren't Americans doing that. Those are foreign operatives doing that. And there's a reason India banned TikTok. There's a reason 2 weeks ago Nepal banned TikTok. Both of them used the reasoning as social disruption. So let's ban TikTok. If we know the Chinese Communist Party is in control of it, let's ban it altogether. Then the rest of our social media, whether it's Twitter or Instagram or Facebook or any of those things, we need to get those social media heads to show us their algorithms. Let every American see what they push, why they push it, how they push it, so that we have better clarity on how these algorithms and social media is pushed. Why do things get put in front of us when we go on social media? What messages get fed? The second thing is those social media companies, for a national security reason, need to let us know which are real people and which are foreign bots. There are millions of bots on social media that are not even real people. They're just machines that do nothing but churn out things that divide us, things that are hate speech, things that cause disruption in other ways. We need to get rid of all the foreign bots. I wish every person would go and get a blue check mark and put their real name there. Because as a mom, I think life would be a lot more civil. We want and will always fight for Americans to have freedom of speech. What I don't want is freedom of speech for Russia or Hamas. And that's happening right now with these foreign bots. When I was at the United Nations, China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea made it very clear that this was the cheapest form of warfare. And they don't just do it here in America. They do it across Europe, too. And if you see, Europe is having these same issues. So that's the second thing we can do. The third thing is Joe Biden really needed to come down on this the right way. He spoke well of Israel when they were first attacked. But the one thing he did a few months ago was in the definition of anti-Semitism. He left out, purposely, anti-Zionism. Anyone that doesn't think Israel has a right to exist, that is anti-Semitism. If all of this was happening on college campuses and on our streets, and it was the KKK, people would be up in arms. This is no different. This hate is just the same as racism. And we have to make sure we call it out. So I would change the definition to include anti-Zionism so that we can start making sure that is included in how we handle anti-Semitism in government, on college campuses, in our schools, everywhere. And then Biden needs to call it out for what it is. The squad, you can't have members of Congress. And also our congressional members need to be doing this. You can't have members of Congress that can go and say things that are so anti-Semitic and then not in any way be called out for it, be sanctioned. But when the head of the party, Joe Biden, doesn't call out the squad for the things that they are saying, you're never going to, if the tone at the top is not right, you're never going to see this get any better. And so there are things we can do. And we need to make sure that no student ever feels unsafe on college campuses. And to go and see what's happening from, riots where they're having students, locked in a room because they feel like they can't come out, to, a Jewish teacher who was, literally locked in a closet because she couldn't come out, to where they've had threats saying that they're going to shoot up a kosher dining room on a college campus. None of this is acceptable. Freedom of speech is fine. Violence is not. And we've got to make sure that we bring accountability and law and order back to this entire system. It used to be that places of higher education used to be the pinnacles of what they did to show responsibility and show what it meant to be a good citizen. That's all gone out the window now because they're being paid with foreign actors. They're not really doing the things that really require to focus on what anti-Semitism is. And so that we'll do multiple things when I'm president to make sure that we acknowledge the real truth behind what anti-Semitism is, and we'll put an end to it.
Thank you, Nikki, and thank you, Marlis, for being on the line. Again, you're on a live telephone town hall with Nikki Haley and Marlis Patma. If you like what you're hearing and you plan to support Nikki in the caucus, definitely let us know and press 1. If you're still undecided, though, press 2. And if you're willing to help us out and help at a caucus site, help volunteer in Iowa, press 9.
Your response has been registered.
Live to Dana from Davenport. Dana, you're live. Go ahead. Hey, Dana, you're live.
He's on the picture. Move on.
We might have lost Dana, so let's go ahead and go to Gregory from Bettendorf and see if we can get Dana back.
Hello, Ambassador Haley. Very good to speak with you. My question is, I'm a Gen Xer. I've lived through, now, unfortunately, to realize a couple decades in seeing politics of the Republican and the conservatives, really the conservative values that the Republicans, I believe, maybe used to stand for. And specifically, I'm talking to fiscal conservatism. I've seen for the past sort of 2 decades here, the Republicans sort of lose their ways with fiscal conservatism and really almost contribute to the national debt as much as when Democrats are in charge. What is your plan to bring fiscal conservatism back to the Republican Party, and especially with respect to our national debt? Thank you.
Thank you, Gregory. And you are singing my song. Boy, you hit the nail on the head. First of all, I think it would be great if we had an accountant in the White House. I think it is far past time. I am an accountant. Accountants are problem solvers. And boy, do we have a problem on our hands with with our debt. I mean, you look at the fact that we're almost $34 trillion in debt. We are having to borrow money just to make our interest payments. China owns some of that debt. And it would be easy for us to say that Joe Biden did that to us. And while he's led us down this socialism creep that is dangerous, that we need to stop, our Republicans did that to us too. And we can go back and look at that $2.2 trillion COVID stimulus bill that they passed with no accountability whatsoever. It expanded welfare that has now left us with millions on Medicaid, 100 million people on Medicaid, 42 million people on food stamps. That's a third of our country. And did Republicans try and make it right after that? No, they doubled down and opened up earmarks and pet projects for the first time in 10 years, literally pushing through 7,000 of them last December. In the 2024 appropriations budget this year, Republicans put in $7.4 billion worth of pet projects and earmarks. Democrats put in $2.8 billion. So now you tell me who the big spenders are. And if you want to know how they spent your money, $30 million on an honors college in Vermont, $10 million to tear down a hotel in Alaska, $7.5 million on a courthouse in Colorado. I mean, the list goes, $1 million for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I mean, just ridiculous things that have been done, all while 60% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. So the way that we will do this is the first thing we should do is claw back the hundreds of billions of dollars of unspent COVID dollars that we know are out there. The second thing is, instead of 87,000 IRS agents going after middle America, we should go after the hundreds of billions of dollars of COVID fraud. 1 out of every $7 was fraudulent. If 8% of our budget is interest, we've got to stop borrowing. We've got to cut up the credit cards. You have to balance the budget every day. I had to balance the budget as governor. There is no reason Congress does not balance their budget. So we will stop the spending, we'll stop the borrowing, I will eliminate the earmarks, and I'll veto any spending bill that doesn't take us back to pre-COVID levels. That will save us trillions. And the second thing we'll do is, presidents typically meet with their governors once a year. I will meet with our governors once a quarter, Republican and Democrat, with the sole purpose of taking as many federal programs as I can and pass them down to the states. That way you're reducing the size of the federal government and you're empowering the people on the ground in the states. I would much rather, on things like welfare, healthcare, education, have someone like Kim Reynolds handling that money than some bureaucrat in D.C. handling that money. That will go a long way in making sure that we do that. The next thing that I'll tell you that we need to do is we need to allow room for the middle class to breathe. We're watching in America, the rich are getting richer, the poor are getting poorer, and the middle class are getting squeezed. And so what we'll do is we'll eliminate the federal gas and diesel tax in this country. And then we will cut taxes on the middle class and simplify those brackets. That way we will allow them to get more cash in their pockets for the things that they really need and allow that middle class to grow again. Then we'll make small business tax cuts permanent. Congress made them temporary. They made corporate tax cuts permanent. But I know from growing up in my family, small businesses are the heartbeat of our economy. We make those small business tax cuts permanent. That's a lifesaver because, one, small businesses, when they get cash, they don't go on vacation. They hire people. And that's what we need to see happening. And so, yes, there are things that we can do. We will pay down debt. We will fill our coffers. We will make sure that we know the value of a taxpayer dollar. And we'll do what I did as governor of South Carolina. When I came in, same issue. We're just going to do it at the presidential level, what I did at South Carolina. So it's not what I said, it's what I did. I replaced the head of every agency, whether they were good or not, because I wanted to freshen it up. Then I sent people into each agency to clean them up. Take down red tape, take down bureaucracy, get them mission-focused again, get rid of any problem children. In some cases, we tweaked agencies. In other cases, we gutted agencies. And then I started putting them on 90-day benchmarks. Every 90 days, they had to prove certain things so that they could show the taxpayers their return on investment. So all of a sudden, it was like a 90-day report card to taxpayers every night, to show them what they were doing. And then we went to our agencies and we saw that they were spending because they were worried they wouldn't get the same amount in the budget the next year. So I put all agency spending online for every taxpayer to see. And then I incentivized our agencies to start giving money back to the taxpayers. And magic happened because the agencies started to compete with each other on who could be the most effective and the most goal-oriented and results-oriented for the taxpayers. That's the mode that we have to do. When I do that with my agencies, just like when I did that in South Carolina, then you can go to Congress and say, okay, we started it, now you need to finish it. And then you're setting the tone at the top for how Congress needs to look at the value of a taxpayer dollar. So that's how we'll get it done. But yes, it is by having an accountant in the White House that puts focus on every taxpayer dollar and how it's spent.
Thank you, Nikki. And Gregory, thank you for your question. We had Dana on earlier from Davenport, and she was having trouble with her phone, but she sent in her question to us, and Nikki and Marlis would love to read it out to you all on her behalf. She asked, what, Nikki, will stand you apart from Donald Trump, and what will you do to bring us back to unity as a party and as a country for that matter?
Thank you, Dana. That's a great question. We hear that a lot at all of our town halls. Whether they're in Iowa, New Hampshire, or South Carolina, that is something that everybody's talking about. I'll start by saying that I'm very honest when it comes to the issue of Donald Trump, because I think you deserve that honesty. I think President Trump was the right president at the right time. I was proud to serve in his administration and serve America. That was very important to me. And, when you look at what happened, I agree with a lot of his policies. The problem with President Trump, rightly or wrongly, chaos follows him. Chaos just follows him. I mean, everyone knows I'm right on that. And my concern is, in a time where we've got a country that's divided and a world that's on fire, we can't survive if we're sitting in chaos. We've got to move forward. We've got to get a new generational leader. We've got to leave the baggage and the negativity behind. And, when I decided to run, I called him. And I called him for two reasons. One, because, he had given me the job. It was the right thing to do. And two, because I wanted him to know I was in it to win it. And that we had to have a new generational leader. And that we had to get our country back on track in a positive way. And I know that we can do that. If you go, that's my overall difference. If you go to policy differences, I can tell you when it comes to the economy, he got us $8 trillion in debt. 8 of the 34 trillion was under his watch, and he allowed Congress to spend that way, and he allowed those COVID stimulus packages. I don't know that our kids are ever going to forgive us for that. I think when you look at, dealing with all these foreign adversaries that we have, I disagree with the fact that, he congratulated the Communist Chinese Party on their 70th anniversary, or that he said Kim Jong-un is his friend, or that when Israel was down on our knees after October 7th, he criticized Netanyahu and praised Hezbollah. I think that's a terrible message to send to leaders around the world. We have to let countries know what we expect of them. And the goal is I would do exactly what I did at the United Nations. I let countries know what America was for and what America was against. I didn't care if they didn't like me, but I wanted them to respect America. And that's how we took the kick me sign off of our backs, and America was respected again at the UN. The tone at the top matters. And when you have that tone at the top, that's how you'll get people together again. If you look at the multiple crises that we dealt with in South Carolina when I was governor, any one of them could have split us apart. We had that horrific shooting at Mother Emanuel Church. And we lost 9 amazing souls at a Bible study. And 2 days later, the Confederate flag, the killer was draped in a Confederate flag. And it was an incredibly personal issue for people in South Carolina. And I called for the Confederate flag to come down. And it was a hard thing because I knew it would take 2/3 vote of the House and 2/3 vote of the Senate. And I knew that 50% of Americans saw the Confederate flag heritage and tradition. The other 50% of Americans saw it as slavery and hate. It wasn't my job to judge either side. My job was to pull out the best of them and get them to see our way forward. And we were able to do that. We didn't, and this was on the heels of Ferguson. We didn't have riots. We had vigils. We didn't have protests. We had hugs. The tone at the top sets everything in line to where people come together. And in that one horrible crisis where the national media wanted to make it about racism and hate and gun control and everything else, South Carolinians showed the world what strength and grace look like. We could have that again. And that's what I promise you we'll do when I become president.
I'm going to just chime in on this one. One of the things, I have 3 grown children and 10 grandchildren. And one of the things I want is for my children to look at their leaders and say, I want to be that. I have all the confidence in the world that I could have any one of my children look at Nikki Haley and they could say, I want to be like her. I want to act like her. And I'm going to give you one thing that I noticed in the last week or two. You know that our governor, who I absolutely adore, endorsed a different candidate. And she has the right to do that. But one of the first times Nikki had a chance to say her name in a public stage was at the Family Leader event, and she praised her. She praised Kim Reynolds as being a great governor. You heard her tonight say what a wonderful job Kim Reynolds is doing. That's how we should be reacting to someone. We shouldn't tear people apart because they think differently than we. We shouldn't tear people apart because they choose to support someone different than us. We have people who can't talk to their liberal friends because everything has become so divisive. If we want the divisiveness to stop, we need to elect someone like Nikki Haley because she has the right tenor, the right compassion, with the right issues, the right views, the right stamina, and the right guts to get it done. So I just want you, as you're thinking about, can I support Nikki Haley? I want you to think about what you want your kids to look at in their next president. What you want them to emulate in your next president. And if you, like me, say, I want that to be Nikki Haley, then please consider pressing 1 to support or pressing 9 to volunteer, because there is no greater thank you could give Nikki for going through this, because this is a terrible job. That's one of the questions I asked her. Why are you doing this? Running for president is bad. Being president is hard. But she cares so much about her country, and she wants to leave something to her children. So anyway, I just want you to think about that as you think about supporting her, the kind of person she is.
Thank you, Marla. That was sweet.
Thank you, Marlis, and thank you, Nikki. And again, you're on a live telephone town hall with Nikki Haley and Marlis. We have time for just 1, maybe 2 more questions. So I want to go to Hancock, Iowa. Shiley, I apologize if I'm mispronouncing that, but you're live. Go ahead.
Hi, this is Shayla. Hi, Ambassador Haley. As a veteran, my question is, in order to be a strong country, we need to have a strong military. Our military can't make the numbers for recruitment, and they're very woke. If you become commander-in-chief, what are you going to do to change that?
Oh, Shayla, I mean, it is truly unbelievable what's happened to our military. And, you know, I can say this as the wife of a combat veteran and a military spouse whose husband is currently deployed. You know, from just that military family side of it, we want to know that our men and women are safe. We want to know that our country has their back. But then you look at what's happened, and you see how much our military is getting degraded. And it's getting degraded because it's lost its mission focus. And now the military is doing all of these other things that it shouldn't be doing in order to defeat the threats that are coming our way, whether it's Russia, whether it's China, whether it's Iran in this unholy alliance, whether it's the ballistic missiles that are coming from North Korea. The fact they are all united in their hatred for America. And the one thing I saw every day at the United Nations is the best way to overcome that evil is with American strength. And American strength comes when you have a strong military. Strong militaries don't start wars. Strong militaries prevent wars. Our goal should always be to prevent war. And that's why I take the stances I do, is to do whatever it takes so our men and women never have to go fight, that they never have to do any of those things. But what that means is that doesn't mean throwing a lot of money at the Department of Defense. It means cleaning up the Department of Defense, getting rid of those programs that don't belong, getting rid of the bureaucracy, getting rid of the red tape. And that includes, and you can ask my husband and any military member, we have, for goodness sakes, we have got to get rid of these gender pronoun classes. It's unthinkable right now that they are having to worry about what pronoun to call each other, instead of worrying about what threats are facing us from Russia, China, and Iran. So that will absolutely be one of the things we need to do. We need to remember government was intended to secure the rights and freedoms of the people. It was never intended to be all things to all people. A number one job of a president is to keep Americans safe. You keep Americans safe when you have a strong military. We'll keep Americans safe when we modernize our military, when we're not looking at wars of the past that were just land, air, and sea, but we're looking at the future, which is cyber, artificial intelligence, and space. We need to be focused, the military, on skill, not on pronouns. We need to be focused with them on modernizing their equipment and making sure we're replenishing and building up our coffers of equipment so that enemies never want to touch us in the first place. Those are the things we'll do to get our military back on track. And our men and women, when you look at recruitment, the recruitment is down 25%. And an interesting statistic about that is we typically get our recruits, 80% of new recruits, and I know this because we're home of Parris Island in South Carolina and Fort Jackson in South Carolina, where we always get these new recruits. 80% of new recruits come from military families. And for the first time, military parents and grandparents are telling their kids, don't do it. Think about that. They're telling them, don't do it. And why should they do it? Right now, look at how we take care of those who take care of us. Right now in America, 33,000 veterans are homeless that we know of. 1 in 3 veterans suffers from PTSD or thoughts of suicide. We lose 22 heroes a day to suicide. If a veteran needs to go to the doctor's office, on average, it takes them 29 days to go to the VA. Why 29 days? Because on the 30th day, they get to go to the doctor or hospital of their choice. So midway through the 29 days, that veteran gets a call to reschedule, and the clock starts all over again. It's shameful how we treat our veterans. I will make sure that we take total care of our veterans. When my husband deployed to Afghanistan, we were blessed when he came home. But that was the easy part. The hard part's when we actually got home. Michael couldn't hear loud noises. He couldn't be in crowds. Life had passed him by for the year that he was gone, and that transition was tough. We can't just love our men and women when they're gone. We got to love them when they come back home, too. By the grace of God, Michael is fine. But we will make sure that we focus on that transition. We'll make sure that they have telehealth so they can get the mental health care they need right when they need it. We will make sure they go to the doctor or hospital of their choice because they've earned that right. And I'm telling you, if it takes me making sure that we fix veterans' health care, we'll have every member of Congress have to get their health care from the VA if that's what it takes to make it right. Because I know then they'll have rock star health care treatment.
Thank you, Nikki, and thank you, Marlis. And we are drawing to the end of our telephone town hall this evening. Before we pass over for closing remarks to Marlis and Nikki, a reminder, if you do plan to support Nikki in the Iowa caucuses on January 15th, press 1 and our team will follow up with you. If you're still undecided, press 2. And if you'd like to volunteer and get more engaged in our efforts in Iowa in advance of the caucuses, please press 9 to volunteer. But with that, I'll pass it over to Marlis and then Nikki to close us out. Marlis, did we
I'm
lose
so
you?
sorry. I had myself muted because I didn't want to interfere with Nikki. I just want to say, first of all, thank you for everybody who took the time to be on the call. I know there's many things you could have been doing tonight, but I don't think there's many things you could have been doing that's more important than being on this call with Ambassador Haley. She, I believe, is exactly who we need for our next president. I hope you see the same thing. And so I'm just going to close to encourage you to go to the caucuses. Be bold. Be brave. Vote for the person you want to vote for, not the person you think you should vote for because somebody else tells you you should vote for them. Vote for the person you want to vote for. Because I think if more people would vote for the person they wanted to vote for, more people would be voting for Ambassador Haley. So thank you again for being here. Be bold. Be brave. Vote Haley.
Thank you, Marlis. It was an honor to be on the call with you. I adore you so much. Thank you for the support and the friendship that you're showing to us. And I want to thank everybody for taking their special time and joining us today. You know, I strongly believe that America has an amazing ability to self-correct. Sometimes we have to hit rock bottom to know where up is. We're there. Now all we have to do is look up. Now is the time. And, you know, someone asked me when I announced why I was running. And I said, my parents came here 50 years ago to an America that was strong and proud and full of opportunity. I want them to know that country again. I'm doing this for my husband, Michael, and his military brothers and sisters because I want them to know their sacrifice matters. I want them to know that we love our country. I'm doing this for my daughter who just got married, and I saw how hard it was for her and her husband to buy a home. And I'm doing this for my son, who's a senior in college. And I am tired of watching him write papers of things he doesn't believe in just to get an A. That's not us. That's not America. And so in order to fix this, this is going to require courage from every person on this phone. Courage for me to run, and courage for every one of you to know. Don't complain about what happens in a general election if you don't play in this caucus, because it matters. We have a country to save. And so if you like what I've had to say today, tell 10 people. Go to NikkiHaley.com. Find out where we're going to be in Iowa next week and in the times to come. We're not giving up on Iowa. We're going to fight till the very end for every Iowan vote. You know, go volunteer. Be a part of what we're trying to do. We can do this. Keep faith in our country, because I know that we can get through this together. But in order to do this, it means telling all your friends and your family to get involved. Come out and see us, volunteer, put signs up in your yard, whatever you want to do, or come out and just ask me a question wherever we're going to be. But more than that, I believe that America's going to be okay. And I believe America's going to be okay because I trust Iowans. I trust them because I know they know how to do this. They know how to make these decisions. They take them seriously, and they do their job for our country. And so I trust you on that front. I look forward to seeing you out on the campaign trail. We're going to keep being the hardest working candidate out there and the smartest working candidate out there. And so I look forward to seeing you soon. But thank you again for taking the time, and thank you again for sharing your time with us. God bless you all.
The Access Live event has ended. Thank you for calling. Goodbye.
Okay, so I don't normally talk on top or after any of these videos, but I'm gonna have to start because there's an important issue that even though I attempt to ask the question, many times they don't answer this question. They answer a question that they would rather answer. My question has been to all of these people has been, yes, there are 22 veterans who commit suicide every day. In a year, that's around 8,030 people that commit suicide every day. This is a tragedy. We do need to work on it. And you can tell that NIkki Haley talks a lot about trying to help the veterans and to make sure they live a more stable and secure life, that transitioning and getting back to civilian life is hard. However, the one thing that she has dodged multiple times, and it's not just her, but most of the candidates, is that people that are born in the United States with a disability, like autism, nonverbal autism, ones who are have severe problems with interacting in the general population, people with Down syndrome whose IQs are that of a 4-year-old. There's a lot of people with cerebral palsy that are wheelchair bound and unable to speak or have any control over their body or over some of their limbs. These people are reliant on a program called SSI. It's a part of Social Security disability, but it's not the same as if you were working and you got injured on the job and you had been working for a while, because you would qualify for SSDI at that point and get up to like $3,000 if you're really lucky, but most people get around $1,700. The people on SSI only get on average $500 to $600. At the most, they can get $931, but on average, it's under $600. They also have to qualify as being 100% disabled, which meaning that they're not going to have a job. They're not going to have gainful employment. The government doesn't believe that they can have gainful employment, and so that this is what they're given. They are also punished if they try to work, try to get a job, which is, finding purpose. And if they get married, their spouse's income counts as their income. So they are again punished as if they were working. However, someone on the VA disability, say they're only at 60%, okay, 60%, not 100%, 60%. They actually get more money than someone on SSI did. Yes, they went to war. Yes, war is horrible. And yes, some of them are coming back, with PTSD and injuries. But they're also allowed to work without losing any of their benefit. They get additional money if they get married. They get additional money per child, up to $500 for the first 3 children. The 4th and 5th and 6th, it's a lower amount. But the spouse gets money, and sometimes even parents get money from the child, that was in the military and got injured. Yes, PTSD is a very serious problem, and it makes things difficult for people. But most of them, I would say probably 98%, are able to actually still interact, have a job, be successful. But it's hard. Now, if you get 70 and 80, 90%, a lot of those people, they're majorly disabled, and it's getting a job is not happening. But the fact is that at 22 a day, that's 8,030. People living on the fixed incomes of SSI, people who were just born in America with a body that doesn't function properly, a brain that doesn't operate in a way that society will allow them to interact, they commit suicide at 50,000 plus a year. That's tracked up 61% in the last 3 years. I don't know. Ask yourself, do you know anyone, or do you know someone, that might know someone that's dealing with someone who's, has a disabled child, Down syndrome, nonverbal autism? This autism in general is not you might see them out walking around, but life is very difficult for them. Someone with, other serious significant injuries that make them wheelchair bound, that a lot of them live on only $500 to $600 a month, and there's nowhere for them to live. In fact, most of the programs for them for housing put them on second, third, and story buildings on city squares that have no access for ramps or wheelchairs. And if that's the situation they're in, Medicare and Medicaid won't approve their wheelchair or scooter because the housing unit they live in is not handicap accessible. There are people living in abandoned trailers. Yes, abandoned trailers out in the woods, right off I-35 in Iowa, that are living on SSI because that's all they can find. This is something that, if you ask yourself, also many of your parents, your grandparents, the amount of Social Security they get from retirement is very, very little. And even though they did everything they were supposed to do, they're not able to make it because the amount of taxes have gone up since they've retired so much on property taxes and everything else that they're not able to make it. I know people that when I was working for CMS that a $3 a month change in their medication expenses put them at risk. People living on a fixed income can't just go out and magically make more money. They can't go especially earn more money. Some of them physically can't get out of bed without spending $25,000 a day in medical costs to do so. This needs to be addressed, and these candidates need to be asked these questions, and we need to hold them to answer the question more than just, we got to worry about inflation. Yeah, inflation's a problem. And Senator Rick Scott from Florida, the former governor, that, the predecessor of Ron DeSantis, said that, inflation in Florida is causing each household an additional $750 a month in expenses. That's more than the average benefit people on SSI are getting. These are American citizens. However, I want to remind you that illegal aliens are living in New York City at 5-star hotels that would cost them in excess of $5,000 a month to live in if they were paying market rate, and they're getting additional $3,000 in some places on top of the housing expenses, plus other money for food, phones, and free travel. People who've never worked a day in their lives, people who don't speak English, nor do they really want to speak English. But and people on the left will say, well, they're escaping a bad situation. They're trying to find a better life. Really? What are they trying to escape? Poverty? Okay. What about the people who were born here that were forcing to live in poverty? Well, they're trying to escape violence. Okay. A lot of people who live on disability, living on fixed incomes, have to live in really, really cheap housing because that's just what they're able to find, or it's what they're put into. A lot of this lower end housing is in neighborhoods with a lot of other impoverished people. These neighborhoods tend to be violent because they're scarce of resources. I know people in New York City that, because of his disability, his autism, he had to live in a very, very bad neighborhood. Because of his autism, he tried to avoid most social interactions because he knew that people didn't like him. It bothered them. They didn't want to deal with him, so he would always try to avoid them. He would cross the street when people were walking his way so he didn't have to, bother them with his presence. A bunch of kids one night crossed the street with him and beat him to near death. They shoved objects in his ears and caused him to go completely deaf. The way this autistic person dealt with the struggles of his autism was music. That's how he decompressed. Everyone likes to find a way to relax and let go of all the stress. He was no longer able to do that, and he committed suicide once he was released from the hospital. That's what we're asking many American citizens to go through. And I would like to see more people. This was a Right to Life town hall with someone who was the president of Iowa Right to Life twice. We need to agree that we need to protect the unborn, and they need the right to live. But once they are born, and a lot of abortions are because of a deformed fetus, a high chance of severe autism or Down syndrome. In Europe, they actually almost promote it like, yep, it's going to be a Down syndrome kid. We're not going to let you give birth. We're going to make you abort it. That happens in Europe, and specifically the Netherlands, where they brag about how they're going to extinguish Down syndrome by just not allowing them to be born at all. If you're going to be pro-life, you need to be pro-life all the way through. This is the one thing that Chris Christie said in between bites, was that if you're going to be pro-life, that means pro-life the whole way. These people do not deserve to live in absolute squalor and dirt and degradation. I know people who are living in houses that are missing walls because their pipes burst, because they won't turn on the heat in the winter because they can't afford it. Because when they've tried to use the programs, people who don't need the programs but know how to scam them have used all the money. And we're not doing much to make sure that that doesn't happen. As Nikki mentioned, that there's a lot, and $1 and $7 was fraudulent. That's a problem with this mass government benefits, is that we don't target the people who actually need them all that well, and the people who do need them go without. So we're gonna need to focus this, and we can focus it on making sure that people who we have documented disabilities, who are almost 100% reliant on the federal government for their assistance to get those benefits first, and that everyone else who cannot provide proof of full-time permanent disability, that they need to have a little bit more stringent path to find benefits to pay off bills, especially if they were able to work but chose not to because they knew they could get programs to pay for their bills anyway. Anyway, that's what I want to mention on top of these town halls. I don't like to comment on these videos after the fact, especially when the candidate can't answer, but I'm hoping that other people will be able to bring this topic up to not only Nikki Haley, but to Donald Trump if he does take questions from time to time, to Ron DeSantis, to Vivek Ramaswamy, to Doug Burgum, to Asa Hutchinson. I believe those are the only ones that are still in the race. But 2024, at least for Iowa, it's about to end here in just over a month. So please take these questions and make sure they're answering, because this actually has a larger impact on people. Actually, more than you realize. Just ask yourselves or ask your friends, do you know someone who this would impact? And I guarantee you're going to find out that this impacts more people than you realize. Whenever I do get to bring these questions up, I have 30 or 40 people come up to me afterwards and say, that's a good question. I really appreciate it. Okay, then why didn't you ask it? And why aren't you pressuring these candidates on an answer? All right, everyone, thank you very much. Please go out and interact with the candidates in a positive manner. Do not argue with them. Do not harass them. Talk to them politely and with dignity. Don't forget, these people are putting a lot on the line, and they don't do it. Most of them don't do it because they want to, prestige or status. They actually do it because they genuinely care about the direction of this country, and that goes for both parties. Now, their idea of how to do that are different from each other, but I do want you to, I can't tell you that I think everyone is out for the right reasons, but an overwhelming majority of these people aren't out to be vindictive or to self-glorify themselves. That's not what they're in. I believe me, I've been doing this since I was 9 years old, working with politicians since I was 9. They're more of them than you would think actually genuinely want to do good and benefit the people in which they represent. Please discuss and engage with them with the same courtesy, because they deserve it. These people go through a lot of stress. They go through a lot of negativity. Be the positivity that you want to see from the changes you want to make. Please engage with all of them and their staffs with politeness and courtesy, and do not be mean or harass them or verbally shout at them. They're human. They have parents. They have children. They have loved ones, just like you do. And they do care about the issues, except for unless people bring them up on a routine basis, they're never going to discuss them. Thank you very much, everyone. I hope everyone has a good night. Please like, share this video along with the other political videos that I'm posting up, because I want more people to hear about this stuff. I get the privilege of going to all of these more than most other people do. So I just want to make sure everyone else gets to hear what people are saying. Thank you very much and have a good night.